Hello, and we're rolling. Hello, my name is Brad Sizemore. I'm here today with Warren Herman. Warren is currently a Catholic Christian, but he is a former practitioner of the New Age and Eastern religions. So, Warren, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing okay, Brad. Thanks for having me as part of your interview about a person who has had an experience in another religion and has changed religions.
Mhm.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I think this will be interesting because, like I said, um, you were kind of a cradle Catholic. You're a Catholic now, and I'm sure you would classify yourself as devout. But for a certain period of your life, your adult life, you were outside of the church, and so you have a unique perspective about about Eastern religions, about what's called the general term, the New Age movement, and anything associated with that. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Maybe you could tell us about yourself now, or go back to your childhood, and we'll go from there.
All right. So I think somewhere that we can start is I think I want to start with a distinction that I've had to make in my spirituality that I think will guide us in kind of understanding the whole subject. And it's between, because I love wordplay, it's going to be between two words. And I think the words are vacation and vocation. And really for me, I think that I've come to at least try to transition from a spirituality that's about having a vacation from life to reduce my suffering, to kind of, retreat into myself, to hopefully one where I am responding to the call of God. And, that entails, hopefully, I don't feel like I'm doing it in any significant or powerful way, but it's hopefully to suffer for others, and not necessarily just to avoid suffering. And that distinction between a vacation and a vocation, I think, is what will guide our discussion of where I was in the New Age movement in the Eastern religions and where I'm trying to go as a Catholic. And that's going to kind of be that shift in attitude that I think can kind of frame this discussion. I think what we'll do, maybe we can just kind of frame out, what is, let's just kind of maybe list the different things that I've been involved in, maybe
That's a good idea. Let's go ahead and do it that way. Yeah. What have you been involved in?
All right. So I've probably been a practitioner of most religions, or believed in the main tenets of almost each religion for at least a day. So there's been at least a day where I probably embraced the teachings of almost every major faith.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there was mostly the faiths that I practiced were, I was a follower of, I kind of got into, I really got into a lot of these things by watching PBS, which is public television,
Mm-hmm.
Channel 13 in New York. It doesn't seem like the way you would get into a religion, but I really I saw a lot of different shows about I saw shows about meditation. I saw basically a New Age teacher, giving a fundraiser for them. And I got into it really basically through that medium, so that's how I got into it. And I think that then I went on to read books. I read Hindu and Buddhist scriptures. And at some points I considered myself a Buddhist. I was influenced by, I'd say I really liked the Dalai Lama. I had some influence of Tibetan Buddhism. I really liked Thich Nhat Hanh, is a Vietnamese Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
And I also really liked the contemporary psychotherapeutic Buddhist movement, like the pop psych Buddhist movement, which would be considered the mindfulness-based interventions movement. That was really my thing there.
Yeah. How old were you when you began to go? So you said you were watching PBS or whatever. How old were you when
I was about an adolescent, so I was in ninth grade. It was right after around like ninth grade, 10th grade.
Mhm. Okay, so very formative. So you're, like you said, so at least for the way you put it, at least for a day, you were an adherent of all the major world religions. What's that bumper sticker that has the I just forgot the name of it.
Yeah,
It's got the cross.
they coexist
They
flag.
coexist, yeah. So you're like a living coexist. You're
I
like a
was.
living at one point a living coexist.
Yes, I was. And I also used to be, for a while, I identified as quite literally almost something like that. I kind of identified a little bit as I ran, for example, in college, I ran the Unitarian
Okay.
Universalist Club.
Yes.
I was not a Unitarian Universalist, which I thought was really funny. And they were like, "Oh, sure, like that's completely normal. Like the head of the Unitarian Universalist Club is not a Unitarian Universalist. It's like, so that was okay." But I was in charge of stuff like that. But that kind of, I thought of becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I often, I would always go back to the idea of wanting to become a Buddhist monk. That was kind of my,
Mm-hmm.
my thing, that I would keep going back to. But definitely I was also a practitioner. So I got involved in other things. I was influenced by Native American spirituality. I got influenced by I practiced Reiki for about for a number of years under a very under an atypically intense mentorship. Usually it's just you pay them and you have a weekend workshop and that's it. But I was really studying under a lady for a long time. So there were a lot of elements there, and I also was really an adherent of a certain New Age guru. And his writings more so. So it was I was definitely a hodgepodge of things,
Mm-hmm.
but there was definitely a coherence to the hodgepodge. And I think that maybe this is where I can kind of define the New Age movement. And the way I define the New Age movement is it has three elements. It has the element of believing that we somehow as human beings are intrinsically divine, has a seeking after special powers. So there's a divinity of the self, an intrinsic divinity to the self, a seeking after special powers, and clairvoyance, healing abilities, and this can be more bland. This could be a seeking after wealth or some type of control, wealth, relationships, but through a mystical means. And then there's also the essential thing of what the New Age is basically trying to do. The reason why it's called the New Age is because it's trying to bring about an age, an era of unity, where everybody experiences their own divinity and then interacts based on that in a type of global unity, global harmony. And so it's this sense of self-divinity, special powers, global unity are the 3 points that I feel kind of guide and really unify this hodgepodge of ideas.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's the first time I've heard it phrased that way. I think that's good. That seems to be a very good synthesis. And what I was thinking as you were speaking of that, and I talked to you before we started recording, I'm going to ask you about how is this related to religion, or is it a religion? How did it fulfill your religious longing? But just to take a minute here, you talked about intrinsic divinity, special powers, unity. I can't help but see how this is it's like a pseudo gospel, because as Christians, we are not intrinsically divine. We are born with the divine image. We lost the divine likeness. We're going after that. But, we pursue theosis through Christ, participating in the divine nature. We have the sacraments. So Christ gives us these things. Those are kind of like special powers in a way. And Christ talks about the kingdom of God all the way back to the prophet Isaiah, the unity that will come about. So I could see how this would be attractive, because it's something that is anthropologically fulfilling. So just related to that, how is it the New Age specifically, how is it related to religion? Is it its own religion, or how would you classify that?
Well, I remember in college, there was some people were taking a class called new religious movements. And I think the New Age is really a shift in a religious sensibility. It's really a fusion of two things, because at one point, and I can kind of frame it this way, because in addition to the things that I mentioned already, the thing is, there's really, I was also involved in something that would be called evolutionary spirituality, which is like its own weird or emerging field of spirituality, which is like this, and it really captures the essence of what's going on with the New Age and what you're exactly asking here. Is it a religion?
Mm-hmm.
What type of religion is it? It's really the merger of, and it happened in different places in the East and the West, but there was a shift basically where like the understanding of like a progress, a dynamic, progressive type of an idea was wedded to the traditional like Eastern mysticism idea of like a self-annihilating mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so traditional Buddhism is just to leave the world. The New Age combines that longing to disappear and go to zero and be a complete nothing, with an understanding that there's some type of a progress. And there's specific ways that that's happened in the East and the West. It really got, I mean, that's like how it operates philosophically. It's that fusion of those two ideas that's like, as these things have kind of synthesized in the modern era and captured like the longings of people, it's kind of becomes this like weirdly fulfilling blend of doing and being that kind of fulfills, as you said, it is anthropologically sound, but it's a replacement
Mm-hmm.
of being in touch with ourselves in the image and likeness of God, in the love of God, with just being fulfilled by experiencing our own image and likeness. Like, it's literally like our own essence is the image and likeness of God. In the New Age and the Eastern faiths are about being satisfied only with our image and likeness and not the love that's supposed to illuminate that image and likeness.
Okay.
It's like it would be in a Catholic church, it would be like saying, being satisfied with the beauty of the tabernacle and not having a host inside of it.
Okay.
So the New Age meditations see us, they see the beauty of the human person as the tabernacle, but use that to replace the way in which we're supposed to be vessels for the indwelling Trinity. And that's
yeah. Okay. So I see what you're speaking of is what we call in theology the telos, at the end. Okay, they might be pointed in the right direction, subjectively speaking. They have this idea, like you said, I'm going to go toward the tabernacle. I'm going to go point myself toward the divine. But they're not getting to the end for which we were made. Our end is to rest in the divine essence. Okay, to view the divine essence intellectually, but they're finding their own human essence and mistaking it for the divine.
absolutely.
Good. And I see, with my limited knowledge of the New Age movement and some of what you described already, could you talk a little bit about the danger of syncretism? So the way that I think the New Age either is absorbing other, traditional religions, or the traditional religions are absorbing the New Age. And this is going to be viewed mostly by Christians. So could you speak specifically to Christians? What's the danger that could, because I'm taking it as a danger. I mean, we can look at the good in it. We have a very short time. Speak a little to that. And then to wrap up here, as we get to the end, I'll ask you, what drew you back to Catholicism? So if you could go ahead.
I think the danger of syncretism is because every idea is completely, like, all thought is intrinsically dogmatic. There's no such thing as a tolerant idea. Every idea hangs itself, every movement or philosophy has a guiding absolute. Like, it always has an absolute, even if it says all paths are the same, like that's the New Age's, dogma, is that all paths are the same. it automatically irons out the distinctive claims and the human insight of every religious founder. So like the Buddha was against aspects of Hinduism, or Muhammad was against aspects of, other things. It's like the different religious founders have legitimate points against other religions, but the New Age would get rid of not only Jesus, the distinctions of our Lord Jesus Christ, but would get rid of the human element of it's a dogmatic religion that says everything's one. Only those 3 points matter. Everybody's really saying the divinity of people, special powers, and global unity. So they just iron out everything else. That's the danger of every religion is in danger as a result of that absolutistic dictatorial claim of the New Age movement to make everybody one. So.
Okay, good. So this is a threat to all traditional religions.
Yeah.
Just could you take a minute or so, just speaking now in the United States, as you see, specifically Catholicism, do you think was this a danger before? Is that past? Is it a danger right now?
I think it's a very subtle. I mean, there are so many problems facing the church and society, but I do think it's really part of the mix because it's going everywhere. It's in almost every field. I see things constantly about like that are ways in which this is getting into the church, and I'm not saying ultimately that every way in which the New Age has something like, yes, we should maybe take a deep breath to relax sometimes. We should maybe think a better thought, like we think a little bit more positively. These aren't the worst things in the world, but they're taken to replace the real relationship with God. That's what makes them dangerous. And there's so many ways that this really does happen. There's lots of ways in which there are certain, I'm on the mailing list. I kind of keep an eye on the different organizations that put out stuff I think is not so good. And there's a lot of organizations that really do promote, even within the Catholic Church, that exact error. And the thing is that because people are ungrounded from our traditional mysticism, they find this like easier way to get in touch with something that feels divine, but they don't realize that they're in touch with the image of God in themselves and think they've found God. And then they teach the whole of our legitimate mystical tradition with that distortion, and it leads everybody astray. So it's definitely a problem among the many problems, and it's seeping in through the mental health professions. Mm-hmm. It's seeping in through there's lots of ways it gets in all different areas because these things do bring about peace. But the question is what this peace comes from, and there are better ways to do that in harmony with the Catholic faith.
Good, thank you. I'm going to close on one more question. Before I do, you brought up the Christian mystical tradition. So God willing, next time we talk, we're going to focus in on the Christian mystical tradition, that ancient tradition, and specifically mental prayer. So Warren, I'll be back with you sometime soon. And in the next minute or two before we close, you could just sum it up. What was it that drew you back to Catholicism? What was it about Catholicism that fulfilled maybe what was lacking, or what drew you back?
I think I would summarize it this way. What happened to me, like I'll say it very simply as an event and then very simply as a process. Ultimately, what happened was I was deeply involved in practicing these different types of meditation. My goal was to get enlightened before I ever got a job. That was my aim in life. And I read the best descriptions that I could about it. And eventually what happened in the descriptions in the books almost happened to me. And it was a terrifying experience. Like my life flashed before my eyes. It was when they talk about the normal meditation in the Eastern or the New Age thing, is more like going for a swim in the silence. But this was more like almost drowning in the silence. And it was a very terrifying experience. And I needed to keep my mind together after that. And so what I did is I had a very distorted understanding of our Lord. But I talked to Jesus after that. And that was just it wasn't because I was being pious in any way. It was because I needed to hold myself together. And I talked to God, And eventually, over time, I came. So I had to try to understand what this all meant. Like, what did this mean that I couldn't be enlightened? And I had to, like, it was just hitting bottom and exploding my mind and not wanting enlightenment anymore. That made me have to face the reality that salvation was the right. I mean, I had to try to seek salvation, understand what that was, and eventually, I came to realize the coherence of the Catholic Church. And I struggle, but the thing is that I still always come back to seeing that the Catholic Church is the church where the truth dwells, and that's and so what. And going back to exactly what I said, at the beginning of this, the vacation of the vocation, I realized that spirituality is not about listening to myself in Eastern or New Age meditation as a replacement for talking to God. Spirituality is about talking to God and being heard by God and speaking to God, in the mental prayer, that type of thing. Doesn't mean we can't pay attention to anything. Doesn't mean we can't think a thought, but it has to be open to prayer. And that I was trying to escape the world in a vacation by just paying attention until I zoned out. But eventually I had to learn to talk to God. And eventually I found my way home to the Catholic faith through a lot of struggles and having to shed a lot of those beliefs. And now I'm learning more to really untangle myself, to really trust more, to put myself in God's hands more, and to really try to come out of my shell and, accept mercy, and understand that, the real healing and the integration of the human person that I was really, the problems that I ran from, the need for perfectionism, all these things that drove me into that silence of the New Age can really be found in relationship with God, with Christ in the Catholic Church. And that's really what I'm, finding now.
Good. So you finally found that relationship, and the vacation comes after the vocation. So
yes, the vacation is not, does not come first.
Living according to reality. So Warren, thank you very much for agreeing to this. I learned a lot. Hopefully anyone who's listening to this can learn a lot. I will post this online. So if you have any questions or comments for Warren, you can put it in the comment section. And we will, like I said, be doing some follow-up interviews with Warren, hopefully, because he's a treasure trove of different information. We like to bounce things off each other. So Warren, thank you very much again, and we're going to wrap it up. So have a good evening, Warren. Thank you, and God bless.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you.